Okay, so we're going to talk about our vocabulary first. What we're going to introduce this time is the focus, okay? That's the whole topic of this lesson. So the focus of a parabola is a fixed point in the interior so that everything is equidistant from that. So all that this really is if you have a parabola, here's my vertex, my focus is going to be somewhere inside that parabola. It's always on the inside, okay? If you know that, then that should help you whenever you're graphing to make sure you know you're putting it in the right spot, okay? So your focus is right here. Your vertex would be right here, and then we have what's called a directrix, which is perpendicular. If I have my axis of symmetry here, it's perpendicular to my axis of symmetry, okay? So this would be my directrix. If that's my axis of symmetry, this is my focus. Yes, I know we have pictures down here, but it's easier to draw it for you to see yourself instead of all of it thrown at you at once, okay? And then, you know, this is your vertex. All right, your vertex is in the smack dab middle of your focus and your directrix, okay? So the distance from the vertex and the directrix and the vertex and the focus is what we call P. I probably should have drawn that over here, but that's okay. We're going to have to solve for this P, okay? And that's what we're going to use to know the point of our focus and the line of our directrix. It's very simple to do, but I'm just drawing it out for you, okay? Your focal chord is what passes through the focus, and it is the distance from one side of the parabola to the other, okay? Very simple. That also has a formula that you just plug the p-value in, okay? So all of this, to me, it's easier. It's easier to draw it for you to visualize it instead of looking at this all at once, okay? So this is pretty much everything I just drew opening upward, okay? Now your focal chord, if this is my focus, I'm going to put an F for focus. Your focal chord is what's going to pass through that focus and go one side of the parabola to the other, okay? So that is my focal chord. I'm going to do FC. It looks really confusing at once, but it is not. Okay, for a vertical parabola, okay, it's going to be, you know, is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. You know that that's vertex form, okay? The y equals is the part that makes it vertical, okay? Now, up until this point, we just had an A right here. Well, now if you look at the equation over here, it's 1 over 4p. So all this is telling me is A is equal to 1 over 4p. Okay? That's on your formula chart. A is equal to 1 over 4p. And P is equal to 1 over 4A. So we're going to know our A value. We're going to need our P value. So we're going to be taking that A value and plugging it in. Okay, so we're going to know from the equation I give you what the A is. So we're going to be using this equation and this formula to find our P. Okay? Your focus for a vertical is you're going to be changing your y value, because if it's vertical and your focus is in the inside of the parabola, then you're moving up or you're moving down, which is affecting your y, okay? Now your directrix, we said, was perpendicular, okay? So if my axis of symmetry is vertical, my directrix is horizontal, and that's going to be y, okay? But see how each time you're adjusting it according to that p-value? So finding your P correctly is going to be the most important part of this whole section, okay? Now, if this number in front of your parentheses is positive, it opens up. If it's negative, it opens down, okay? Or you can go according to your p-value. If your p is positive, then it opens up. If your p is negative, it opens down. I don't think about it like that. It makes more sense to me to know if this is positive, it opens up. If it's negative, it opens down. That's what we've always been looking at. Okay? Now, all of that is on your formula chart, even this right here. Okay? So everything you need is on your formula chart, and it's separated vertical versus horizontal, so you don't have to guess anything. Okay? Now, if it's horizontal, then it's going to be x equals with your y minus k in parentheses and your h out here. So we know our vertex is hk. So you're going to have to be really careful when it's horizontal. Okay? So if your vertex is still going to be hk, now instead of taking the opposite of your x value, you're going to be taking the opposite of the y value. So whatever is inside parentheses, that's the sign that you're changing. Okay? So you got to be careful with that. So we've known up until this point you just changed the sign of your x, right? Because I always say x is a liar. But now that we've thrown in horizontal parabolas, you just need to know whatever is inside parentheses, that's the number you're changing signs. Okay? So then your a is still going to be 1 over 4p. Okay? If you know that your focus is inside your parabola, like I said, then now if it's opening right, you're moving your x values right, or you're moving your x value left for your focus. Okay, so that p is now going to affect the x value of your vertex instead of the y value. Okay, now if it's horizontal, that means your axis of symmetry is going to be horizontal, so your directrix is perpendicular, your directrix is going to be vertical, which is your x, and that's where you're going to change that x value also. Okay, now if it's positive, it's going to open right. If it's negative, it's going to open left. Okay, to me that makes sense because your x values are going, the positive x values are going to the right. So if your a is positive, you're opening it to the right. Okay, but again, you've got all the formulas, so it should not be hard. We're going to have two separate sections. You're going to have a section where you don't graph and you label everything, and then you're going to have a section where you do graph. Okay, but either way, you get the graphing calculator on this section of the test, so you can still double check your answers and if you're opening it the right way. Okay, so have your formula chart right next to your notes so that you can look. What we're going to do is get the equation in standard form. Okay, you either want it x equals or y equals, nothing else on the left. Okay, once it's in standard form, we're going to state the direction of the opening, and then we're going to find all of our characteristics. Okay, so if I'm looking at this first example, I have x equals 1 over 8 y squared. That's in standard form because I have x equals by itself. Okay, now if it's x equals, is that horizontal or vertical? It's horizontal. So if I know it's horizontal, my only options for opening is left or right. Okay? Well, if I look right here, this 1 over 8, is that positive or negative? Positive. So is it going to open left or right? It's going to open right. Okay, so that means my graph should look something like this. Okay. Now my vertex, if my vertex form is y minus k squared plus h. Okay, I'm getting this from my formula chart. This is vertex form for a horizontal. And I compare that to my equation I have. Do I have anything inside my parentheses? No, so that means my y is 0. Do I have anything added or subtracted? No, so my vertex is going to be 0, 0. Y'all follow me? Okay. Now, my axis of symmetry for horizontal tells me y is equal to k. That's what my formula chart says. So y is equal to, my k value is 0. Now my focus tells me h plus p for my x value, k for my y value. Alright? Well, we need to know what this p is before we can do our focus, directrix, and focal chord. Okay? So all of those, you need your p value. So in order to solve for the p value, your p is equal to 1 over 4a. Okay? My a is what's in front of this y squared. So it's 1 over 4 times 1 over 8. Okay, so whatever that number is, that's what you're going to plug in for your a. Alright, now, in your calculator, you can just type that. You don't have to do the mental math. You can let your calculator do it for you. If your calculator is not cleared, remember to doc V it, and that will put you in the scratch pad. Control divide gets you your fraction template. So I've got 1 over 4 times, control divide again, 1 over 8. Y'all good typing that in? Okay, that's going to give me 2. So my p is equal to 2. Okay, so for my focus, I need to take my h value, which is 0, and add 2. What's that going to be? 2. So my focus is 2, 0. Y'all good with that? Alright, so you don't have to, this is all you have to show for that. Okay, there's not a whole lot extensive stuff. I do want to see you adding, like showing what you're adding, but other than that, you're good. Alright, my directrix from my formula is x equals h minus p. Okay, well my h is 0, and I'm subtracting my p value, which is 2. So my directrix is x equals -2. Okay, my focal chord is the distance from one side of the parabola to the other, and that passes through the focus. Okay, and my focal chord formula is on your formula chart, the absolute value of 4p. Sometimes your p value is going to be negative, so that's why you've got an absolute value, and because you're doing distance. Okay, you're doing the length, which only makes sense to be positive. Alright, so I'm going to have 4 times 1 over 8, and that's in my absolute value bars. So 4 times 1 over 8, just kidding, 2, sorry. I'm looking in the wrong, sorry. 4 times 2, which is 8. My bad. So your focal chord distance would be 8. And that's all you have to do. Now, if you wanted to check, in your calculator, if you go to the graph, remember that f of x is y, but we want to graph x equals. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to delete, and if you hit the delete button, it pops up all of those options. Okay, we're going to choose 6, which is a relation. That's going to allow you to type x equals, control divide, 1 over 8, y squared. Does that open the direction that you said? Yeah. Is my vertex 0, 0? Yes. Now, it's not going to plot your focus and your directrix for you, but you can check to make sure you got the right opening and the right vertex. Okay? They're good with that? Alright. Okay. So, if I look at my next example, y minus 1 is equal to negative 1 over 16 times x plus 3 squared. Is that in standard form? No, I don't have y by itself. So what would I need to get rid of to get y by itself? Alright, so we're going to add 1, and you're going to tack that on at the end. So that's going to give me y is equal to negative 1 over 16 times x plus 3 squared plus 1. Alright, that's my new equation in standard form. Is that horizontal or vertical? It's vertical because it's y equals. So I'm going to look at my a, negative 1 over 16. That's going to tell me it opens where? Down. Alright, now with vertical, you can identify your vertex just like we know to do. Alright, what's my vertex from this? Negative 3, 1. Okay, so my h is negative 3, my k is 1. So my axis of symmetry, if it's vertical, my axis of symmetry is what? X equals negative 3. We good with that? Alright, so now I need to find my p-value. So p is 1 over 4a, which is 1 over 4 times, what's my a? Negative 1 over 16. So keep that sign with it. Go to your calculator. I'm going to doc B it. And I'm going to have 1 over 4 times my negative 1 over 16. Y'all get negative 4 when you type it in? Okay. So P is negative 4. So if it's opening down or left, your P will be negative. Okay? So my focus formula is H with K plus P for my Y value. Alright? So my K is 1 plus my P is negative 4. So 1 plus negative 4 is going to be negative 3. So I keep my H value, which is negative 3, and now my Y value is going to be negative 3 also. Yes.
So why did you put in it, like, we don't do anything with the H?
No, because if you've got, so think about what your graph looks like, okay? My focus is on the inside. So if I'm vertical, I don't change left or right, I'm going up. So that's why, so that's why you're only doing your Y value of your vertex. So if you draw it, that's why I have to draw it. I have to visualize it. Okay, so like with horizontal, if I know my vertex is here and I know my focus is inside the parabola, I know I need to move right. So that's, you would change your X value instead of going up and changing your Y value. Okay. Any other questions? Alright, so my directrix formula is Y equals K minus P. Okay? So Y equals K minus P because, remember that it's perpendicular. If my axis of symmetry is right here, it's perpendicular, it's got to be Y. Okay? And remember your vertex is in the middle. So if I added to get my focus, I'm going to have to subtract to get my directrix. Your directrix is always on the outside. Okay? So K minus P is going to be 1 minus negative 4, which is really going to be 1 plus 4, which is now my focal chord, absolute value of 4 times P, and I'm going to use the correct P value this time, which is negative 4. So this is why you're going to use absolute value, because this is going to give you a negative 16. You got the absolute value of negative 16, which is just 16. If you wanted to graph it and check, you could. I'm not going to right now. Okay? Are y'all good with that? Using your formulas, you can navigate all of that? Okay. So we're still going to be doing the same stuff, except now we're going to graph it. Okay? So I'm going to look at example 1. Is that in standard form? Yes, it's y equals. So is that horizontal or vertical? It's vertical. So if it's vertical, is it going to open up or down? How do we know it's going to open up? This is positive, so it opens up. Okay. For vertical, remember it's y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So my vertex is hk. What is my vertex for this? 3, 1. So then my axis of symmetry is going to be my x equals h. So it's going to be x equals 3. Now for my focus, my directrix, and my focal chord, I need to find my P. Okay, so I'm going to find my P over to the right. So my P is 1 over 4a. So 1 over 4, what's my a value? 1 over 12. So that's going to give you P is equal to what? Should give you 3. Okay. So my focus, my formula tells me it's H and K plus P. Alright, so my K is what? 1 plus my P, which is 3. So my focus, my X value stays the same, 3. And then what's my Y value? 4. Now my directrix is Y equals K minus P. So I'm going to have 1 minus 3. So my directrix is Y equals -2. My focal chord is the absolute value of 4 times P. So the absolute value of 4 times 3, which is just 12. We good with that? Alright, so we're going to graph our vertex at 3, 1. And I'm going to label it because I'm going to make sure you understand each part of this parabola. Okay? So I've got my vertex. My focus is at 3, 4. Alright, I know my axis of symmetry cuts through my vertex. Okay. I know my directrix is Y equals -2, which is a horizontal line passing through -2. Okay. I've got all of that. Now, how am I going to get my other 2 points to do my parabola? You're going to use that focal chord with your focus. Now, think about what's happening. My focal chord is 12. That's the entire distance. So from my axis of symmetry to my outside parabola should be how many points? 6. So you're going to take this focal chord and you're going to take half of it, and I'm going to go 6 in both directions because my total distance is 12. Okay, so I'm going to go 6 to the right and 6 to the left. So those are my 2 points I'm going to be able to use to draw my parabola. So I'm using my focal cord, and I'm using that length. So if I were to go from this to here, it would be the full 12. So that's why you take it halfway, start at your focus, and go halfway one side, halfway the other side. Does that make sense? Okay. Do we have questions? Okay. All right. You don't have to. I don't draw it, so you don't have to. But I do have everything else labeled. Yes, sir. Because your focal cord is the full, so from here to here, that's the definition of focal cord. The distance from one side of the parabola to the other that passes through the focus. So since that's the total, and we know our halfway point, we know our focus is in the middle, that's when you can divide it by 2 and go that way in one side, like one direction, and that amount in the other direction. Okay. So example 2, is that in standard form? Yes. Is it horizontal or vertical? All right. So my horizontal is x equals a times y minus k squared plus h. So this is where you have to be careful with your vertex. Okay, because your vertex is still going to be hk. So you have to understand you're flipping those values. Okay. So for starters, where's it going to open? If it's horizontal, I only have 2 options, left or right. This is negative, so it's going to open left. So my vertex, okay, my h is what's behind my squared term, and it's as is. All right, so my vertex is actually -3, +2. Okay, because if you look at what your vertex form is, my h is over here, and my k is what's inside parentheses with the y, so I got to change the signs. You have to be careful with that, okay? So then my axis of symmetry for horizontal is y equals my k value. What's my k value? 2. So then I need to solve for my p to get my focus, directrix, and focal cord. Alright, so p is equal to 1 over 4a, which is 1 over 4 times, what's my a value? -1 over 4. So p is equal to should be -1. Okay, so my focus formula for horizontal is h plus p and then k. Alright, so my h is -3 plus my -1. So what is that going to be? -4. So my focus is -4, 2. My directrix is x equals h minus p. So I'm going to take my h value, which is -3, minus -1. So your focus, you're adding, your directrix, you're subtracting. Alright, minus a negative turns into plus. That's going to give me -2, so my directrix is x equals -2. My focal cord is the absolute value of 4 times -1. That's the absolute value of -4. Please be careful with your absolute values. So my focal cord is just 4. Alright? So my vertex is negative 3, 2. My focus is negative 4, 2. My axis of symmetry is y equals 2. And I know my directrix is x equals negative 2. All good so far? So if my focal chord is 4, I split that in half, and I'm going to go 2 in the positive direction. So I'm going to go 2 up from my focus. This is my vertex, and this is my focus. I'm going to go 2 up and 2 down, because it has to open left. So that's the only way I can do that. And there's your graph. Now, you can self-check. If you know this is your vertex, your P is negative 1, so that means that your focus should go up 1 and your directrix should go down 1. So whether you're vertical or horizontal, that's how much you're moving graphically. Okay? Are y'all good with that? Are y'all good with the concept? Okay. So if you wanted to use your graphing calculator, the only thing you're using is you're graphing it in the graph and making sure it looks like what you graphed. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I know that you explained the vertex, but could you do it again?
For horizontal?
Like what, yeah.
Okay.
Like why it got flipped.
Okay. So for your horizontal formula, you got x equals a y minus k, right? So if this is my y, your k value, whatever number goes with your y in parentheses, is going to be the y value of your vertex.
So K is Y.
K is y.
And
H.
is X.
So no matter if it's horizontal or vertical, your vertex is always going to be HK. Okay, so if you see here, no matter what position it is, it's HK. So if you look here, if whatever is inside your parentheses with X, that's your X value of your vertex. But since this is in parentheses with your Y, that's my Y value of my vertex. Does that help? Okay. What other questions do we have? We good? Okay. All right, example 3. Is that in standard form? No. Okay. When you have something like this, I want the one that's not squared by itself. Okay? So I want this y by itself. So what do I need to do? I'm going to divide by negative 12. Alright? When I divide that, I'm not going to write x squared over negative 12. That's going to become a negative 1 over 12 x squared. Okay, because you want your a in front of your x squared term. So you need, if you're dividing, you're going to make that a fraction 1 over that. Okay, so this is my new equation. Is it going to be horizontal or vertical? Vertical, because it's y equals. So is it going to open up or down? It's going to open down. How do we know that? We got a negative. Okay, so vertical tells me y is equal to a times x minus h squared plus k. So for my vertex, do I have anything in parentheses with my x being squared? No, so that means my x value of the vertex is 0. Do I have anything added or subtracted? No, so the y value of my vertex is 0. If you need to write h equals 0 and k equals 0 over to the side, so when you're doing your focus and directrix and all that, it's easier for you, you can. Alright? So if it's vertical, my axis of symmetry is x equals h, which is x equals 0. So then I'm going to do my focus and directrix and my focal chord after I solve for my p, which is 1 over 4 times negative 112. That should give you negative 3. Okay? So if my p is negative 3, for my focus, for vertical, my formula tells me h and then k plus p. Alright, so my k is 0 plus a negative 3. So my focus is going to be 0, negative 3. My directrix formula for vertical is y equals k minus p. So I've got 0 minus negative 3. Please be careful with that. Alright, so that's just going to be y equals what? Y equals 3. My focal chord is the absolute value of 4 times negative 3, which is just 12, because you're doing the absolute value of negative 12. So do your vertex. My focus is 0, negative 3. My axis of symmetry is x equals 0, which is the y-axis. My directrix is y equals 3. Alright, now my focal chord is 12. So if I start at my focus, how many am I going left and right? Are you good with that? Do y'all want to try example 4 on your own? Yes. Okay, so I start with my focus. My focal chord is 12, so I half that. And so I'm going to go left 6 and right 6. Okay. Y'all want to try example 4 or y'all want me to do it? Okay. much longer do you need? Is anyone stuck? No? Okay. Okay, even if you're not done, we're going to answer our few main things. Okay? Is it in standard form? No. So what do I need to do to get it in standard form? Alright, so I'm going to subtract 4 and tack that on at the end. So I've got x equals 1 over 8 times y plus 2 squared minus 4. Okay? So then, is it horizontal or vertical? How do we know? Okay, so because it's x equals, we know it's horizontal. So then, what do I look at to know if it's left or right? Alright, so my A is 1/8. It's positive, so where does it open? Okay, very good. Now, remember you got to be careful with your horizontal. It's x equals A times y minus k squared plus h. Alright, so what's my vertex? Very good. Please make sure you pay attention to flipping those. Okay, so then if it's horizontal, my axis of symmetry is what? Good. Alright, so then we need to solve for our P to get our focus, directrix, and focal chord. So 1 over 4 times 1 over 8 should have given you 2. Alright, your focus formula for horizontal is what? Okay, so then my h is what? -4 plus 2. So that should have given you -2. So my focus is -2, -2. Very good. Alright, my directrix. Very good. So if you notice that your focus is changing your x, are y'all catching on to that? If you're changing your x here, then this is going to be your x. You're just adding this one and subtracting this one. Okay. So I've got -4 minus 2, which is going to give me x equals -6. My focal chord is the absolute value of 4 times 2, which is going to be 8. Okay, so then -4, -2 for my vertex, -2, -2 for my focus. Draw your horizontal axis of symmetry. Your directrix going through -6. Okay, and then how do I build my 2 points? So my focal chord is 8, split it in half, gives me 4. So I go for my focus, 4 up and 4 down. So if you have a horizontal graph, okay, you know that it should look like this, right? If my focus is here, the only way I can build the sides of my parabola is if I go up or down. Whereas if it's vertical, the only way I can build it is going left and right. Okay? Okay, do y'all feel good about that now? Okay, do we have any questions? So if you wanted to check it in your graph, you could even go to your table and check the points that you did build from your focal chord and make sure they're in your table. You could do that too. Okay? So you can make sure it's open in the right way. You can make sure that these 2 points are in the table, or you don't have to use it. I mean, the calculator is there for you to self-check. Okay? But we just did all that without it. So it's up to you with how much you use it and how much you don't. Okay? Okay, you are not going to have a quiz over that. Okay? So next class is going to be our last lesson for the chapter. So that's our last lesson for the 6 weeks, actually. Okay? So you will have a quiz over next lesson on review day. Okay?